What's up, guys? Welcome to the first edition of Drew's View, where it will be my weekly breakdown of everything in the Super League basketball, from hot performances to the biggest storylines in our league. But let's start with hot performances, and let's start with the London Lions' Joel Scott, who is giving me early season MVP vibes. 25-7 in only 25 minutes. Now, I know myself, Ant Rowe, Mike Tuck, we were on the Cam McGusty train for MVP this preseason. But one thing that really stood out to me was, you look at all that talent for the London Lions, Scott was the only player with double-figure attempts. So let's keep our eyes on what's brewing in London and keep your eyes on Joel Scott. Next up, Marco Anthony for the Newcastle Eagles, 24-8 against the Gladiators on Sunday. But was it just me, or did he pop off of your screen? His athleticism is straight up incredible. Did you see some of those rebounds? But the biggest thing that stuck out to me was he gave me Deshaun Allen-Ikens vibes, as the Newcastle Eagles, as they did so many times last year, were able to go small. They slid Anthony down to the 5, and that changed the game up in Caledonia, where the Newcastle Eagles was able to snatch the victory from the Gladiators over in overtime. So keep your eyes on Anthony, who looks like a big-time player in this league. And finally, I got to give a shout-out to my man, Ethan Wright. I know his team didn't win the game, but I did pick Cole Long as my most improved. But Ethan Wright, he, again, another one of those players that you just cannot take your eyes off of. What a game that he had individually there. He had 24 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists in 34 minutes. In game number 1, we have to rewind back to last season with Leicester Riders, where he was the 6th man, and he only averaged 21 minutes a game. So the minutes were a career high, along with the points in game number 1. So the opportunity is going to be there for Ethan to get busy this season. So I look forward to seeing much more performances out of him. Now let's transition over to the storylines of the league, and I want to pick up from Maceo Jack being the first swap out this season. I made a video on that you can check out. And I would like to say, I told you so. He was the difference. I was really concerned with the Newcastle Eagles spacing and the lack of scoring. And in this game, sometimes all it takes is one player. So straight out the gate, Maceo was able to put in 23 points off the bench. But the biggest thing was the 109 points. That would have not happened if they didn't decide to make that change. And so Dan Rowledge actually tweeted that this is the first time in his career that he's missed 2 free throws in a game, as we saw him miss those 2 free throws to ultimately win the game in regulation. I would like to say that is an aberration. He shot 93% the last time he was in the league, and he's fresh off the plane, fresh off the bench, and he's only going to get better. And so Newcastle got some decisions to make, because he will be starting next week. So it'd be interesting to see which one of those guys move off the bench. So shout out to Maceo Jack. The next storyline, it has to be the Sheffield Sharks. What happened? Myself, Ant Rowe, Mike Tuck, we had you as champions or runners up, and straight out the gate, you lay an egg. But I want to say to the Sheffield Sharks fans, no need to panic. 2014, my Newcastle Eagles lost our first game of the season, and we ended up going and winning all 4. So sometimes that's the best thing that can happen to you, because it gives you a little bit of humble pie. But they did have a couple of injuries. But I am still concerned about who is going to play point guard for this team. But never mind that. The biggest thing that stuck out to me was the pregame interview with the Atiba Lions. I don't know if you listened to it, but go check it out. But one thing that really caught my eye was his comments on the Bristol Flyers, which he mentioned he didn't know much about them, and it would be a filling out process. Well, by the time they filled them out, they were down by 10 points by halftime. But why that is important is because if you are a championship team, in my opinion, then somebody on the Sharks coaching staff should have been in Newcastle the Sunday before when the Bristol Flyers were in town. It's only a 2-hour trip to be scouting your first opponent of the season, because we know with the London Lions there that you have no room for error. So that's one thing that caught my eye. But again, let's give a shout out to the Bristol Flyers, who made 15 threes. Owen McCormick, great game, another guy that was on my most improved list. But this is a team that only averaged 8 makes a game, so shout out to the Flyers. But last but not least on Drew's View, I got to give a shout out to the Manchester basketball. The vibe, they just oozing with vibes and enthusiasm and sellout crowd. I don't think we've ever seen Manchester like that. Food trucks everywhere. And I got to give a shout out to Rita's Rain who pulled up, because I know I love me some Caribbean food. So next time I'm there, make sure you sort me out, Rita. But shout out to Manchester doing all the right things. But most importantly, was able to capitalize it with a dub. And that is everything on Drew's View for week 1 in the Super League basketball. Plenty more to come. Drop in the comments, beat it up. Let me know what you saw. See you next week.